Maya wiped down another table as the lunch rush finally ended. Her feet ached and she could feel sweat on her forehead despite the restaurant's air conditioning. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Only 3 more hours until her shift ended. Then she had to rush to her second job at the coffee shop across town. Working 2 jobs wasn't easy, but Maya knew why she did it. Her little brother David was starting his 2nd year at college, and every dollar she earned went toward his tuition. Their parents had passed away in a car accident when David was just 16, leaving Maya to take care of everything. She was only 24, but sometimes she felt much older. The restaurant where Maya worked was called the Golden Spoon. It sat in the heart of downtown Atlanta, with tall windows and fancy decorations that made it look expensive. And it was expensive, the kind of place where people spent more on one dinner than Maya made in a week. She had been working there for almost 2 years, and she knew exactly what type of customers came through those doors. Most of the customers were polite enough, though some treated the waitstaff like they were invisible. Maya had learned to smile through it all. She needed this job, and jobs like this weren't easy to find. The Golden Spoon paid better than most restaurants, even if it meant dealing with difficult people sometimes. Maya had studied music in college before everything changed. She had dreamed of performing on stage, of recording albums, of sharing her voice with the world. Those dreams felt far away now, buried under bills and responsibilities. But she still carried a small piece of that dream with her. On her uniform, right next to her name tag, she wore a tiny silver pin shaped like a musical note. It was a gift from her grandmother before she died, and Maya never took it off. Her grandmother had been a singer too back in the day. She used to tell Maya stories about performing in small clubs and church choirs, about how music could heal hearts and bring people together. "Your voice is a gift," she would say. "Don't let the world make you forget that." Maya tried to remember those words on the hardest days. The afternoon shift was usually quieter than dinner service. Maya used this time to reset all the tables, refill salt and pepper shakers, and prepare for the evening crowd. The Golden Spoon transformed at night. The lights dimmed, candles were lit on every table, and the wealthy elite of Atlanta came to see and be seen. Maya's co-worker Lisa walked by carrying a tray of glasses. "You okay, girl? You look tired." "I'm fine," Maya replied, though she knew Lisa could see right through her. "Just thinking about David's textbook costs. They went up again this semester." Lisa shook her head. "That boy better appreciate what you're doing for him." "He does," Maya said with a small smile. "He calls me every Sunday to thank me. Says he's going to pay me back someday when he becomes a doctor." "He better," Lisa laughed. "You deserve a vacation after all this." Maya continued her work, moving from table to table with practiced efficiency. She had the routine down to a science. Each table setting had to be perfect, each glass spotless, each napkin folded just right. The manager, Robert, was very particular about these things. He reminded the staff constantly that their wealthy customers expected perfection. As Maya worked, she hummed quietly to herself. It was an old spiritual her grandmother used to sing, something about finding strength in difficult times. The melody helped her focus and made the repetitive work feel less tedious. She didn't realize she was doing it until a busboy named Tony walked by and smiled. "You sound good," he said. "You should sing at the karaoke place down the street sometime." Maya blushed and stopped humming. She was always careful not to draw attention to herself at work. The last thing she needed was to be seen as unprofessional. But music was so much a part of her that sometimes it just came out naturally. The late afternoon sun streamed through the restaurant's large windows, casting long shadows across the dining room. Maya loved this time of day. The space felt peaceful, almost sacred. She could imagine what it might be like to perform here, to stand in front of these tables and share her music with an audience. But she quickly pushed those thoughts away. This was her workplace, not a concert hall. By 5 o'clock, the dinner crowd was starting to arrive. Maya watched as expensive cars pulled up outside. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses stepped out laughing and talking loudly. She recognized some of the regular customers. There was the tech CEO who always ordered the most expensive wine on the menu. The judge who never looked waitstaff in the eye when ordering. The group of lawyers who talked about their cases loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya straightened her uniform and checked her appearance in the mirror by the kitchen door. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her makeup was simple but professional. She wore small pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. They made her feel stronger somehow, like she was carrying a piece of her family's love with her. The first few tables of the evening went smoothly. Maya served a young couple celebrating their anniversary, an elderly woman dining alone with a book, and a business group discussing a merger over appetizers. She moved efficiently between tables, taking orders, serving food, and clearing plates. Her training had taught her to be almost invisible while providing excellent service. As the evening progressed, Maya noticed that the restaurant was busier than usual. Every table was full, and there was a waiting list for reservations. Robert looked pleased as he surveyed the dining room. Busy nights meant good tips for the staff and happy owners. Around 8 o'clock, Maya was refilling water glasses when she heard loud laughter from the front entrance. A group of well-dressed people had just arrived, and they were clearly in a celebratory mood. The hostess was leading them to one of the large corner tables, the kind reserved for important customers. Maya glanced over and recognized the man leading the group. Everyone in Atlanta knew Richard Sterling. He owned half the buildings downtown and appeared regularly in the society pages of the newspaper. He was known for his wealth, his political connections, and his big personality. Maya had served him once before, about 6 months ago. He had been polite enough, though she remembered him being quite loud and demanding a lot of attention from the staff. Tonight, Sterling seemed even more animated than usual. He was gesturing dramatically as he spoke, and his voice carried across the restaurant. Maya couldn't make out what he was saying, but whatever it was had his companions laughing heartily. As Maya continued her work, she wondered what the special occasion was. Sterling's group had ordered several bottles of expensive champagne, and they seemed to be toasting something significant. She hoped they would be easy customers. With the restaurant this busy, she needed every table to run smoothly. Little did Maya know that this evening would change everything. That the dreams she had tucked away, the voice she had kept quiet, and the music that lived in her heart were about to collide with circumstances she never could have imagined. Sometimes life has a way of putting us exactly where we need to be, even when we least expect it. Maya approached Richard Sterling's table with her notepad ready. The group had been there for about an hour, and their laughter had grown louder with each bottle of champagne. She could see that Sterling was in the center of attention, telling stories and making grand gestures that had his guests hanging on every word. "Good evening," Maya said with her professional smile. "Can I get you anything else this evening?" Sterling looked up at her with slightly unfocused eyes. The champagne had clearly affected him, and his cheeks were flushed red. Well, he said, squinting at her name tag. "Maya, that's an interesting name. Very exotic." Maya felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her smile in place. "It's actually quite common," she said politely. "It means illusion in Sanskrit." "Oh, she's educated too," Sterling said to his table, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How fascinating." His companions shifted uncomfortably, but none of them spoke up. Maya tried to redirect the conversation. "Would you like to see our dessert menu? We have some wonderful options tonight." But Sterling wasn't done. He leaned back in his chair and studied her more closely. "You know what I find interesting about you people," he said, his voice carrying across the restaurant. "You always think you're meant for something bigger than what you are." The words hit Maya like a slap. She could feel her face getting hot, but she forced herself to remain calm. Other diners were starting to look over at their table. This was exactly the kind of situation she had been trained to avoid. "Sir, I'm just here to serve your table," Maya said quietly. "Is there anything I can get for you?" Sterling's eyes fell on the small musical note pin on her uniform. He pointed at it with a crooked finger. "What's that? Don't tell me you're one of those waitresses who thinks she can sing." Maya's hand instinctively moved to cover the pin. "It was a gift from my grandmother," she said. "I bet it was," Sterling laughed. "Let me guess. She told you that you had a special voice, that you were going to be a star someday, and here you are serving drinks to your betters." The cruelty in his voice was like ice water in Maya's veins. She could see that his companions were uncomfortable now, looking down at their plates and avoiding eye contact. But Sterling seemed energized by the attention he was getting from the other tables. "You know what?" Sterling said, standing up unsteadily. "I want to hear this special voice of yours. I'll tell you what, Sweet Pea. You sing us a song right here, right now, and I'll give you a $500 tip." Maya's eyes widened. $500 would cover David's textbooks for the entire semester. But the way Sterling was looking at her, the tone in his voice made it clear this wasn't really about her talent. This was about power. About putting her in her place. That's very generous, sir, Maya said carefully. But I'm working right now. I need to take care of my other tables. Oh, come on, Sterling said louder, drawing even more attention. Don't be shy. I'm sure all these nice people would love to hear what you can do. Wouldn't you, folks? He looked around the restaurant, trying to get other diners involved. Most people looked away, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. But Sterling's voice had carried, and now the entire restaurant was watching. Maya felt trapped. She looked toward the kitchen, hoping to catch Robert's eye, hoping he would step in and help her. But when she saw him, he was looking at her with an expression that made her heart sink. He was worried about losing Sterling's business. She could see it in his face. Maya, Robert said, walking over to the table. Mr. Sterling is one of our most valued customers. I'm sure you wouldn't mind sharing your talent with our guests. The words felt like a betrayal. Maya had worked at the Golden Spoon for 2 years. She had never called in sick, never been late, never caused any problems. And now Robert was asking her to humiliate herself to keep a customer happy. I really don't think this is appropriate, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. $500, Sterling said again, pulling out his wallet and waving it in the air. That's probably more than you make in a month, isn't it? The restaurant had gone completely quiet now. Every eye was on Maya. She could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment, the expectation. Some people looked sympathetic, others seemed curious about what would happen next. But everyone was watching. Maya thought about David. She thought about the textbook bill that had come in the mail that morning. She thought about the second job she would have to work until midnight. She thought about all the dreams she had given up, all the songs she had kept inside. What kind of song would you like to hear? Maya asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Sterling grinned triumphantly. Oh, I don't know. Something traditional. Something that reminds us all of the good old days when people knew their place in the world. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. Maya felt tears threatening behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had been raised better than this. Her grandmother had taught her that dignity couldn't be taken away, only given up. I'll need to step into the center of the room, Maya said. Sterling clapped his hands together. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to have some entertainment courtesy of our lovely waitress here. Maya untied her apron and set it on an empty chair. She walked to the center of the dining room, her legs shaking slightly but her head held high. The restaurant was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. She thought about her grandmother, about the stories she used to tell about singing in church choirs and small clubs. She thought about the strength it must have taken to perform when people looked down on you, to share your gift even when others tried to diminish it. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something stronger, something that had been waiting for this moment her entire life. She thought about the song her grandmother used to sing, the one about finding strength in difficult times. But she also thought about a song she had written herself, sitting in her tiny apartment late at night when David was studying and the world was quiet. A song about carrying the dreams of those who came before you, about honoring their struggles by refusing to give up your own. The room waited. Sterling sat back in his chair with a smug expression, clearly expecting to be entertained by what he thought would be an amateur performance. His companions looked embarrassed but said nothing. Other diners watched with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Maya had no idea that among those watching was Janet Williams, a Grammy-winning producer who had come to the Golden Spoon for a quiet dinner with her assistant. Williams had been sitting in a corner booth discussing potential new artists for her label. She had noticed the commotion but hadn't paid much attention until now. Maya had no idea that a food blogger for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was at table 12, already taking notes on what seemed like a disturbing display of power and privilege. She had no idea that someone at table 15 was quietly recording with their phone, sensing that something significant was about to happen. All Maya knew was that she was standing in the middle of a restaurant full of strangers, being asked to perform like a trained animal for the amusement of a cruel man. But she also knew something else. She knew that her voice was real, that her grandmother's gift lived inside her, and that no amount of money or power could touch the truth of who she was. She opened her mouth and began to sing. The first note that came from Maya's lips silenced the room completely. It wasn't what anyone expected. Rich, pure, and powerful, her voice filled every corner of the golden spoon with a warmth that seemed to transform the very air. Maya sang without accompaniment, her voice carrying a melody she had written in her grandmother's honor. The song told the story of a woman who worked in other people's houses, cleaning and cooking, but who sang spirituals while she worked. Songs that kept hope alive during the darkest times, songs that reminded her family that they were more than their circumstances. She carried music in her heart, Maya sang, her voice growing stronger with each line. Through every storm and every trial, she sang of freedom, she sang of love, she sang to make tomorrow worthwhile. The melody was haunting and beautiful, built on the foundation of traditional spirituals, but uniquely Maya's own creation. Her voice had been trained, that much was clear. This wasn't someone singing in the shower or humming while doing dishes. This was an artist who had studied her craft, who understood breath control and pitch and the emotional power of music. Sterling's smug expression began to fade. He had expected something amateur, something he could mock and dismiss. Instead, he found himself listening to one of the most beautiful voices he had ever heard. Around him, his companions sat in stunned silence, their discomfort with the situation now mixed with genuine awe. Maya continued singing, her eyes closed, lost in the music and the memory of her grandmother. She swept their floors but never bowed. She served their meals but kept her pride. She knew that dignity lives inside where money and power cannot hide. The lyrics weren't just beautiful. They were pointed. Maya was telling her own story through her grandmother's, speaking directly to the situation she found herself in. She was claiming her dignity even as someone tried to strip it away. At table 15, the person with the phone continued recording, tears streaming down their face. They had come to the Golden Spoon for a business dinner, but they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that needed to be shared with the world. Janet Williams sat forward in her booth, her dinner forgotten. In 20 years in the music industry, she had heard thousands of voices. Most were good, some were great, but only a handful had that rare combination of technical skill and raw emotional truth that made a true artist. Maya had it. Williams could feel goosebumps on her arms as Maya's voice soared through the restaurant. And when the work was finally done, Maya sang. She'd gather children round her chair. She'd teach them songs of ancestors, songs of struggle, songs of prayer. Maya's voice broke slightly on the word prayer, not from lack of skill, but from pure emotion. She was thinking of sitting on her grandmother's lap as a little girl, learning these same songs, being told that her voice was a gift that connected her to generations of strong women who had used music to survive. The restaurant staff had stopped working entirely. Busboys stood frozen with trays in their hands. Other waitresses gathered near the kitchen door, tears in their eyes. They all knew Maya, had worked beside her for months or years, but none of them had known she could sing like this. She said, "Your voice is not your own, child. It belongs to all who came before. Sing their stories, sing their strength, sing until your spirit soars." Sterling shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What had started as a cruel joke was turning into something that made him look petty and small. The other diners weren't looking at Maya with amusement or pity. They were looking at her with respect, with admiration, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for concert halls and recording studios. Maya opened her eyes and looked directly at Sterling as she sang the final verse. "So when someone tries to break you down, when they say you don't belong, remember who you carry with you, and let them hear your grandmother's song." The last note hung in the air for what felt like forever. Maya stood perfectly still, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths, her eyes still locked on Sterling's face. She had given everything to that performance, poured her heart and her history and her hope into every note. The silence that followed was profound. No one moved. No one breathed. The entire restaurant seemed suspended in the moment between the end of the song and whatever would come next. Then someone at table 12 began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in applause. People stood up from their tables, clapping and cheering like they were at Carnegie Hall instead of a downtown restaurant. Sterling sat frozen, his face pale. His $500 tip suddenly seemed pathetic, insulting even. He had tried to humiliate this young woman, to put her in what he thought was her place. Instead, she had shown everyone in the room who really had class, who really had dignity. Maya stood in the center of the applause, overwhelmed by the response. She had performed before in college recitals and small venues, but never like this. Never with such raw emotion, never with so much at stake. She felt like her grandmother was standing beside her, proud and strong. Janet Williams was already out of her booth, making her way toward Maya. She moved quickly, her mind racing with possibilities. This was exactly what she had been looking for. Exactly the kind of authentic talent that couldn't be manufactured or packaged. Maya had that rare quality that separated true artists from mere performers. She made you believe every word she sang. The food blogger was typing frantically on her phone, already composing the story that would run in tomorrow's paper. She had come to review the restaurant's new menu, but she had witnessed something far more significant. This was a story about dignity, about talent, about the power of art to transform a moment of cruelty into something beautiful. At table 8, a talent scout for Atlanta's premier music venue pulled out his business card. He booked artists for the Fox Theater, the Tabernacle, all the major concert halls in the city. He had never discovered talent in a restaurant before, but he knew it when he heard it. Maya finally became aware of the applause around her. She looked out at the faces staring back at her with admiration and respect. These were the same people who had been watching her serve tables just minutes ago. Now they were on their feet, celebrating her gift. She looked back at Sterling's table. His companions were clapping politely, but their faces showed embarrassment for their host's behavior. Sterling himself sat motionless, his wallet still in his hand, looking like a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake. Maya walked back to his table with quiet dignity. "Thank you for the opportunity," she said simply. "I hope you enjoyed the performance." Sterling looked up at her, and for the first time that evening he seemed to really see her. Not as a servant or an object of amusement, but as a human being with extraordinary talent. The applause was still echoing around them, and he could see people throughout the restaurant looking at him with disapproval. "That was," he started, then stopped. He couldn't find words that wouldn't make him sound even worse than he already did. Maya didn't wait for him to finish. She picked up her apron and began to tie it around her waist, preparing to return to work. But before she could take a step, Janet Williams appeared at her side. "Excuse me," Williams said, her voice warm but urgent. "My name is Janet Williams. I'm a music producer, and I would very much like to speak with you." Maya stared at her in shock. Janet Williams was a legend in the music industry. Maya had studied her work in college, had dreamed of someday working with someone of her caliber, and now she was standing here in the Golden Spoon asking to speak with Maya. I'm working," Maya stammered. Williams smiled. "I think your manager might be willing to give you a few minutes off. What you just did up there, that was extraordinary. I've been in this business for 20 years, and I've never heard anything quite like it." Robert appeared as if from nowhere, practically pushing Maya toward Williams. Of course, take all the time you need," he said, clearly recognizing the producer and understanding what this could mean for his restaurant's reputation. As Maya and Williams moved toward a quiet corner of the restaurant, the room slowly began to return to normal. But the energy had changed completely. People were talking excitedly about what they had just witnessed. Phones were buzzing as videos and messages spread across social media. And at his table, Richard Sterling sat alone with his thoughts, finally beginning to understand that he had just tried to humiliate someone who had more talent, more grace, and more dignity than he could ever hope to possess. Janet Williams led Maya to a quiet booth in the corner of the restaurant, away from the curious stares and excited whispers. Maya's hands were shaking as she sat down, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. The most successful music producer in Atlanta was sitting across from her, looking at her with genuine interest and excitement. "First things first," Williams said, pulling out her phone. "I need your contact information. That performance was absolutely incredible, and I don't want to lose touch with you." Maya recited her phone number with a trembling voice. She couldn't believe this was real. Just an hour ago, she had been worried about paying for David's textbooks. Now one of the most powerful people in the music industry was asking for her number. "Tell me about your background," Williams said, leaning forward with interest. "Where did you train? Have you recorded anything? Are you represented by anyone?" Maya felt overwhelmed by the questions. "I studied music at Georgia State," she said quietly. "I graduated 2 years ago, but then my parents died in an accident. and I had to take care of my younger brother. I've been working here and at a coffee shop to pay for his college." Williams nodded, her expression softening with understanding. "That's incredibly admirable. And you've been writing your own material? That song you just performed, that was original?" "Yes," Maya said. "I wrote it about my grandmother. She raised me after my parents' first accident when I was little. She used to tell me stories about the old days, about how music helped people survive difficult times. The lyrics were powerful," Williams said. "And your voice." "Maya, I've been in this business for 20 years. I've worked with Grammy winners, platinum artists, people whose names everyone knows. What you have is rare, very rare." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. These were words she had dreamed of hearing her entire life. But they felt surreal, like something that happened to other people, not to waitresses working double shifts to support their families. "I want to offer you a recording contract," Williams said simply. "I want to help you share that gift with the world." Before Maya could respond, a woman approached their table hesitantly. She was middle-aged with graying hair and wore a press badge around her neck. "Excuse me," the woman said. "I'm Catherine Rodriguez from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I was having dinner here tonight and I witnessed what happened. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions?" Maya looked at Williams, who nodded encouragingly. "It's up to you," Williams said. "But this kind of story could be very powerful." Maya agreed, and Rodriguez sat down with her notebook ready. "Can you tell me about what led up to your performance tonight?" Maya recounted the evening's events, speaking carefully about Sterling's behavior while focusing more on her own experience. She talked about her grandmother's influence, about using music to maintain dignity in difficult situations, about the importance of honoring the people who came before us. As they talked, Maya became aware that other people were approaching their table. A man in an expensive suit introduced himself as the booking manager for the Fox Theater. A young woman with colorful hair said she was a music blogger with over 1 million followers. An older gentleman handed her a business card and said he represented artists for television appearances. "This is happening very fast," Williams said, noticing Maya's overwhelmed expression. "Why don't we exchange numbers with everyone, and we can sort through everything tomorrow when you've had time to process all this?" Maya was grateful for Williams's protection. She collected business cards and contact information, but she was having trouble focusing on anything except the surreal nature of the situation. 2 hours ago, she had been just another waitress. Now she had a recording contract offer, and 6 people wanting to work with her. Across the restaurant, Richard Sterling was having a very different evening. His business associates had grown quiet and uncomfortable, clearly embarrassed by his behavior. Several people at nearby tables had given him dirty looks. His attempt to humiliate Maya had backfired spectacularly, making him look petty and cruel in front of some of Atlanta's most influential people. "Richard," one of his companions said quietly, "I think we should go." Sterling nodded, but as he stood to leave, he found himself walking toward Maya's table instead of the exit. Williams looked up at him with cold eyes, clearly recognizing him as the man who had orchestrated the evening's events. "I wanted to apologize," Sterling said stiffly, his voice barely audible. "My behavior tonight was inappropriate." Maya looked up at him with calm eyes. "Thank you for saying that," she said simply. Sterling waited for her to say more, but she didn't. Her grace in that moment made his earlier behavior seem even more shameful. He turned and left the restaurant without another word, followed by his uncomfortable companions. "You handled that well," Williams said after Sterling was gone. "A lot of people would have taken that opportunity to embarrass him the way he tried to embarrass you." "My grandmother taught me that dignity is something you keep for yourself," Maya said. "You can't give it away and you can't take it from other people." Williams smiled. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. I think she would be very proud of you tonight." As the evening wound down, Maya found herself exchanging contact information with several more people. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. A photographer from a national magazine wanted to do a feature article. A representative from a major talent agency left his card. Maya's co-workers gathered around to congratulate her before she left. Lisa hugged her tightly. "Girl, I knew you could sing, but I had no idea you could sing," she said. "You're going to be famous." Robert, the manager, approached her cautiously. Maya could see the guilt in his eyes for not standing up to Sterling earlier. "Maya, I want you to know that you can take all the time you need to explore these opportunities. Your job will be here when you want it. Maya thanked him politely, but they both knew she wouldn't be coming back to wait tables. Not after tonight. As Maya finally prepared to leave the restaurant, Williams walked her to the parking garage. I want you to think about the offer, she said. But I also want you to know that this isn't just about your talent, though that's extraordinary. It's about your story, your authenticity, your ability to touch people's hearts. What happened in there tonight was magical. Maya drove home in a daze, her phone already buzzing with notifications. Someone had posted a video of her performance online, and it was spreading rapidly across social media. Comments were pouring in from people who had been moved by her voice and her story. When she got to her apartment, David was waiting up for her, studying at the kitchen table. He looked up as she walked in, immediately noticing her emotional state. Maya, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya sat down across from him and told him everything that had happened, about Sterling's cruelty, about finding the courage to sing, about Janet Williams and the recording contract offer. David listened with growing amazement. So you're telling me that my sister, who works 2 jobs to put me through college, just got discovered by Janet Williams? He said. Maya, do you realize what this means? Maya was beginning to understand what it meant. It meant that all those dreams she had put aside might not be lost after all. It meant that her grandmother's gift would live on. It meant that sometimes when life puts you in an impossible situation, the only way out is through. Her phone rang. It was Williams. Maya, I hope I'm not calling too late. I just wanted you to know that the video of your performance already has over 50,000 views. My phone hasn't stopped ringing with people asking about you. Are you free to meet tomorrow? I think we need to move quickly on this. Maya looked at David, who was grinning and giving her thumbs up. Yes, she said. I'm free tomorrow. After she hung up, Maya sat in her tiny apartment kitchen trying to process the evening's events. 12 hours ago, her biggest worry had been textbook costs. Now she was potentially looking at a completely different life. She thought about her grandmother, about all the stories of strength and perseverance she had shared, about singing in the face of adversity, about maintaining dignity when others tried to strip it away. Tonight, Maya had honored that legacy in a way she never could have imagined. Her phone buzzed with another notification. The video now had over 100,000 views. 3 months after that life-changing night at the Golden Spoon, Maya stood in the wings of the Grammy Awards stage, adjusting her flowing gown and taking deep breaths. The song she had performed in the restaurant that night, now titled Grandmother's Voice Q, had become a phenomenon that surprised everyone, including the music industry experts. The recording had been released just 6 weeks after her meeting with Janet Williams. Within days, it had climbed to the top of multiple charts. Radio stations across the country were playing it hourly. The video of her original restaurant performance had been viewed over 50 million times, and her story had been featured on every major news network. But the success had brought more than just fame and money. Maya had become a voice for dignity in the workplace, for recognizing talent regardless of circumstances, and for the power of music to transform painful moments into something beautiful. You ready for this? Williams asked, appearing beside her with a warm smile. She had become more than just Maya's producer. She had become a mentor and friend, guiding Maya through the whirlwind of sudden fame. I think so, Maya said, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. I keep thinking about that night at the restaurant. How scared I was, how alone I felt. And now? Now you're about to perform for millions of people around the world, Williams finished. But you know what? You're the same person who found the courage to sing with dignity when someone tried to humiliate you. That's what made people fall in love with your voice in the first place. Maya nodded, finding strength in Williams' words. In the weeks since her discovery, she had performed on late-night talk shows, morning programs, and concert stages across the country. Each performance had reinforced the same message. Talent and dignity couldn't be bought or sold, and they certainly couldn't be taken away by those who had never earned them. The documentary filmmaker who had approached her that night had completed a feature film about her story. It had premiered at film festivals and was being distributed nationwide. The photographer from the national magazine had done a cover story that had won awards. Most importantly to Maya, the scholarship fund she had established for young artists from working-class families was already helping dozens of students pursue their dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, the Grammy presenter announced from the stage, performing her hit single Grandmother's Voice, Maya Johnson. Maya walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The audience, filled with the biggest names in music, rose to their feet before she had sung a single note. She looked out at the sea of faces and saw something she had never expected. Respect from her peers, recognition from an industry that had once seemed impossible to enter. At a table near the front, she spotted several of her former co-workers from the Golden Spoon. Williams had arranged for them to attend as her guests. Lisa was crying and clapping wildly. Even Robert, the manager, was there, looking proud despite his earlier failure to stand up for her. Maya began to sing, her voice carrying across the auditorium with the same power and emotion that had captivated the restaurant that night. But this time she wasn't singing to survive humiliation. She was singing to honor her grandmother's memory and to inspire others who might be facing their own moments of doubt. She carried music in her heart. Through every storm and every trial, she sang of freedom. She sang of love. She sang to make tomorrow worthwhile. As Maya sang, cameras captured the audience's reaction. Veteran performers wiped away tears. Young artists leaned forward in their seats, inspired by her story. The viewing audience at home saw something rare in the entertainment industry: authentic emotion, genuine talent, and a story that reminded everyone of the power of perseverance. In Atlanta, at an upscale rehabilitation center, Richard Sterling watched the performance from his room. The events at the Golden Spoon had triggered a period of serious self-reflection for him. The public backlash had been swift and severe. His business had suffered, his social standing had crumbled, and his family had confronted him about his behavior. But more than the external consequences, Sterling had been forced to confront the kind of person he had become. The cruelty he had shown Maya that night had been a wake-up call. He had checked himself into therapy, begun attending support groups, and started the long process of trying to become a better man. As he watched Maya perform on the biggest stage in music, Sterling felt a complex mixture of emotions: regret for his behavior, admiration for her grace under pressure, and something that might have been gratitude. Her response to his cruelty had ultimately led to this moment of triumph for her, and a moment of necessary reflection for him. Maya reached the final verse of her song, the one she had added specifically for this Grammy performance. And when someone tries to break you down, when they say you don't belong, remember who you carry with you, and let them hear your grandmother's song. But know that every voice matters, every story deserves to be heard, and sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most broken bird. The audience erupted as Maya finished, the applause lasting for several minutes. She stood on the stage, overwhelmed by the response, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From a frig, honeyed waitress being forced to perform for a cruel man's amusement, to this stage, sharing her gift with the world on her own terms. Backstage after her performance, Maya was surrounded by well-wishers and industry executives. But the moment that meant the most to her was when David appeared, now in his third year of college and studying to become a music therapist, inspired by his sister's story. "I'm so proud of you," he said, hugging her tightly. "Grandma would be too." "She's here," Maya said, touching the small musical note pin she still wore, now on the lapel of her gown instead of a restaurant uniform. "She's been here through all of it." Janet Williams joined them, beaming with pride. "The label is already getting calls about your next album." "This is just the beginning, Maya. You've shown the world what authentic artistry looks like." Later that evening, at the Grammy after-party, Maya found herself in conversations with artists she had admired her entire life. They spoke about her courage, her voice, and the impact her story had made on the industry. Several mentioned that they had changed how they treated service workers after seeing her video. A young waitress approached her nervously, wearing her catering uniform. "Excuse me, Miss Johnson. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm working my way through music school, and your story has given me hope that my dreams aren't foolish." Maya hugged the young woman warmly. "They're not foolish at all. Keep singing, keep working, and remember that your voice matters." The conversation reminded Maya of why her success meant more than just personal achievement. Her platform had allowed her to advocate for service workers' rights, to speak about the dignity of all honest work, and to encourage young artists who might otherwise give up on their dreams. As the evening wound down, Maya stepped onto a balcony overlooking the Los Angeles skyline. Williams joined her, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Do you ever think about that night at the restaurant?" Williams asked. "Every day," Maya replied. Not with anger, though. With gratitude. If Richard Sterling hadn't tried to humiliate me, I might never have found the courage to share my music with the world. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Maya's phone buzzed with a notification. Her management team had sent her the latest numbers. Grandmother's Voice had just been certified triple platinum. The scholarship fund had reached its first $1 million milestone. The documentary about her story had been nominated for an Academy Award, but the message that meant the most was a simple text from Lisa. Watching you on TV with my daughter. She wants to be a singer now because of you. Thank you for showing her that dreams can come true. Maya smiled, thinking about all the young people who might be watching tonight, working in restaurants or coffee shops or any number of jobs while nurturing secret dreams. She hoped they had seen that talent and dignity couldn't be diminished by circumstances, that sometimes the most beautiful voices came from the most unexpected places. 6 months later, Maya stood on the stage of the Golden Spoon, which had been converted into a venue for her scholarship fund's benefit concert. The restaurant had struggled after the negative publicity from Sterling's behavior, but Robert had embraced the connection to Maya's story and transformed the space into something positive. Maya looked out at the audience, filled with young artists, service workers, and music industry professionals. In the front row sat her former co-workers, her brother David and Janet Williams. In the back, she noticed a familiar figure, Richard Sterling, looking older and more humble than she remembered. After her performance, Sterling approached her hesitantly. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly. "What happened that night? It forced me to take a hard look at myself. I've been in therapy trying to become a better person. I know I can never undo what I did. But I want you to know that watching your success has taught me something about real strength and dignity." Maya looked at him with the same calm grace she had shown that night 3 years ago. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," she said simply. "That takes courage, too." As Maya left the venue that night, she carried with her the same musical notepin her grandmother had given her years ago. But now it represented something even more powerful. The knowledge that no one could diminish another person's worth, that talent would find a way to shine, and that sometimes the most beautiful music emerged from the most challenging circumstances. Her grandmother's voice lived on, not just in Maya's songs, but in every young artist who refused to give up, in every person who maintained their dignity in the face of adversity, and in the understanding that everyone's story deserved to be heard.